This podcast is presented by Skies Magazine. If you're interested in the Canadian aviation industry, Skies is your go-to multimedia resource for the latest news, in-depth features, stunning photography, and insightful video coverage. Whether you're an aviation professional or enthusiast, Skies is dedicated to keeping you informed and bringing your passion for aviation to life. Visit skiesmag.com to learn more and subscribe to stay updated on all things Canadian aviation.
Fuel and ignition switches on. RPM switches set. TD switches normal. Doors and hatches closed. Light out. Strobe light on. Restart check is complete. Clear left. Engineers, start number 2. Starting 2. Wind 310, Pilot Project Podcast, clear takeoff, runway 31 left.
All right, we're ready for departure here at the Pilot Project Podcast, the best source for stories and advice from RCAF and mission aviation pilots, brought to you by Skies Magazine. I'm your host, Brian Morrison. With me today is Eli, a captain and pilot in the RCAF and recent graduate of Lead-In Fighter Training, or LIFT, in Italy. Eli, you might be my first listener to become a guest, so welcome to the show.
Hi, Brian. Really happy to be here.
So today we'll be talking about Eli's career so far in the RCAF and his experiences flying the Lead-In Fighter Training course in Italy. But before we jump into any of that, let's go through Eli's bio. Eli was born in Prince George, BC, but spent his formative years in Kelowna. He grew up loving to travel and was fascinated by airplanes, so he thought being a pilot would be a neat way to see the world. The interior of BC has very little military presence, so it wasn't until a trip to Europe to visit the Canadian battlefields of World War I and World War II that he developed a strong desire to serve, and so becoming a pilot via the military became his new goal. Eli joined the RCAF in 2015 under the regular officer training plan and studied physics and space science at RMC. Following his second year, he had the opportunity to travel to Ireland for the summer to OJT at the International Space University's Space Studies program. After third year, he completed Phase 1 training on the Grob in Portage-la Prairie. In 2019, he graduated from RMC and was posted to 429 Transport Squadron for OJT while awaiting Phase 2. While his wait was supposed to be relatively short, it quickly ballooned to over 2 years due to COVID, and so in the intervening time period, he had the opportunity to work in CFS Alert for over 4 months and complete a graduate certificate in human factors. He was posted to 2 CFFTS in Moose Jaw in July 2021, but due to some residual delays from the pandemic, Eli did not finish Phase 2 until April 2023, before being selected to proceed onto Phase 3 Harvard training. Eli graduated with his wings in December 2023 following a very intense month of training in the inaugural Jaw South detachment in San Angelo, Texas. Following Phase 2, Eli was initially streamed to be a first assignment instructor pilot on the Harvard, but thanks to a fortunate combination of timing, luck, and hard work was provided the opportunity to attend lead-in fighter training in Decimomannu, Italy on the T-346. After 10 demanding yet very enjoyable months in sunny Sardinia, he graduated in April 2025 and is awaiting follow-on training on the CF-18 Hornet. Now, just a note for listeners, we're calling this part 3 of our 3-part series on the LIFT program. You can listen to parts 1 and 2 to hear Major Brian Hamza Kilroy, a CF-18 fighter pilot and instructor in Italy, talk about his experiences both in his career and all about the LIFT program. For this episode, we'll be getting the student's perspective. So let's talk about your early days. We touched on this in your bio, but what sparked your interest in aviation as a career?
Yeah, Brian, like you mentioned, I did some travel when I was younger, mostly just around BC. But every time we would go flying, I just thought, getting to hop in a 737 was the coolest thing ever, right? And so being a pilot, doing that full time seemed pretty neat. Not to mention getting to travel as part of your job seemed really interesting and just a great opportunity. And then as well, when I was 15, a local pilots association in Kelowna put on an event for kids where they took us up for discovery flights. So I got to go for a ride in a Cessna. I was the oldest guy there by probably like 9 years. It was me and a bunch of 7-year-olds flying around. But it was really cool. It kind of showed me what it takes to get an airplane airborne. And so it really, I think, excited me a little bit more than just sitting in the back, seeing it from the passenger side.
Yeah, it kind of takes it from like a magical experience like that you're kind of disconnected from, like the plane goes up and you're off on your journey, to actually seeing the skills that make it all happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Seeing him go through his checklists, getting to fly a little bit, point plane left, point plane right. It was really cool. Yeah, really interesting.
So you traveled to Europe and it left you feeling inspired to serve your country. Can you tell us about that and why you didn't join the military right away at that point?
Yeah, touring the battlefields is just a really emotional experience. You're standing on the hallowed grounds where so many young men fought and died. Standing for what Canada represents as a nation. It really brought into perspective how lucky I am, and we all are, for the rights we have as Canadians. I specifically remember standing on the grave of this 14-year-old kid who died in France, and it made me question, as a 16-year-old, who am I? Why shouldn't I do my part to serve Canada? And I kind of knew I wanted to be a pilot, and this interested me in military aviation. I was considering the civilian side, but we couldn't afford it. It's an expensive endeavor to do on your own. But I knew the military would pay for it if I could get in. The thing was, when it came time to apply, I was 17, and the contract you had to sign was 13 years. It just was it was too much for me to sign that contract at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of figured, you know what, I'm going to go to civilian university. I'll go get a degree in engineering, and if I change my mind, I still have a job. Let my brain mature a little bit and see if this is something that I'm really ready to commit to, because it's a big decision for sure.
It is. And I think that shows some maturity that you actually kind of realized that at age 17. I will say I was 20 when I signed up. And I think for me, I had a 12-year contract. And I was quite intimidated at 20 to do that. It is an intimidating thing when you sign on the dotted line for over a decade of service for a shot at a career that you're not sure if you're even going to make it through the training. So I could definitely see where you were coming from at that point. So initially you pursued civilian education, but you felt unfulfilled by this path and decided to join the CAF and attend RMC. Can you tell us what ended up bringing you back to that military path?
Yeah, funny. Turns out engineering is really, really hard. And I didn't really have the self-discipline to fully engage with those studies. So I wasn't very successful. It was a pretty big shock coming from high school. I had fairly good grades back then, but it required a whole new level of work that I just was not ready for. And so that was pretty demotivating, especially since I still felt, that tug, that call to service. I didn't feel like what I was doing was really getting me any closer to what was becoming more clearly my goals. Ultimately, I knew a couple of folks who had gone to RMC and were either there or graduated. And so I chatted with them a bit, and their experiences really excited me. And it seemed like it was much more aligned with my personal motivations. And not to mention, I figured a little bit of external motivation and discipline would probably help me in succeeding in post-secondary education. So I dropped out of the school, took a year off, and devoted myself to the application process, and really just tried my best to have a shot at pursuing this as a career.
Yeah. First question on that. Were you worried at all that dropping out of university would hurt your chances at getting in?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a big, because I always hear how competitive the pilot trade is. And I was acutely aware that it might not work and I might not get accepted. So I was pursuing some other avenues on the side. But at the time, they let you write a essay about why you think you'd be a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I poured my heart into that thing. I had 10 different people edit it. And I had a fairly good record aside from my time at civilian university. So I think the combination of those things kind of worked in my favor.
The other thing that you said that I like is you talked about external motivators. Basically, it sounded like you were kind of saying the discipline of the military would help keep you on the rails. I think the military is full of people who really thrive in that environment where a little bit of structure is really good for us. I know I was one of those people.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I showed up for, BMOQ basic, it was quite the culture shock, as I'm sure it is for everyone. But every day I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is the type of environment I think I should be in. And so I think it was a good decision to join for me personally.
That's awesome. What studies did you decide to pursue at RMC and why?
So after figuring out the hard way that engineering wasn't for me, I decided to study physics and space science. It's a unique program, one of its kind in Canada. Essentially focuses on teaching the fundamentals of space applications in low Earth orbit. So you take courses in things like orbital mechanics, satellite design, space weather, remote sensing, which is essentially using satellites to look at the Earth and get data about things like crop yield, ice melt, that kind of thing. I've always found space super fascinating. I think it's one of humanity's greatest endeavors, both from a perspective of the value of exploration for exploration's sake, and the incredible scientific and economic value it provides to us back on Earth that I'm not sure everyone's fully aware of.
Yeah, space, it's fascinating what a large topic it is and how much it affects our everyday lives. By the time this interview airs, we'll have recently aired a 3-part series with Erin Edwards, who is a Capcom. She's a Canadian Forces pilot, but she's a Capcom down in Houston with NASA. And talking to her for a few hours was like eye-opening. Like it's an amazing work they do down there, and it's crazy how much it affects everyday life.
That is so cool. I've heard a little bit about her, and her job seems incredible. I'm really excited to listen to that podcast.
Yeah, she's an amazing person. She is so interesting to talk to and to listen to, and very, very passionate about what she does. But back to you, RMC can be pretty polarizing. What was your experience like there?
Yeah, RMC, it's certainly a place that can cause some pretty extreme emotions, I'll say. It was probably the hardest thing I'd done in my life up until that point. It challenged me a lot as a person. As you can imagine, if you're fully engaged in school, you've got a midterm first thing in the morning, calculus, it's pretty hard. But surprise, you've got a big inspection the next morning for no particular reason. So it's 11 o'clock at night and you're polishing your belt buckle and ironing your socks and stuff. So there was hard days. That being said, it was really rewarding. I had some really incredible opportunities while I was there. I got to climb mountains with the Expedition Club. I got to go to Ireland on OJT, which I think we're going to discuss a bit later. And I got a pretty unique degree that I'm really passionate about. I made lifelong friends. So I have absolutely no regrets for going there. I will say RMC as an institution is evolving a lot right now. So my experiences are not going to be similar to the ones that people are having now. That being said, if people ask me if they should go, I don't recommend it to everyone. It's for certain people. And so I try and have a good discussion with them about why they want to go.
Mm-hmm. What kind of people do you think? You say it's for certain people. Like, what kind of people do you think?
That's a tough question. I think for people that just want to go and have a university experience, it's certainly not for them. It's for people that want, like me, a little bit of military discipline to kind of help them through, and people that are really interested in service, I would say, because a lot of the times the things you're doing, there isn't a whole lot of rhyme or reason outside of I'm doing this to serve,
Yeah. So you hinted at this already. After second year, you had a really unique opportunity and went to Ireland for the summer for OJT. You went to the International Space University's Space Studies program. Can you tell us about that experience?
Yeah, so the International Space University, it's an institution based in France. It puts on a number of programs. The one I attended is called the Space Studies program. They put it on every year. It's 9 weeks long, and it's in a different location around the world every year. It focuses on the interdisciplinary nature of space and covers topics: space engineering, space law and business, human performance in space, astronaut stuff. I'm not sure if the exchange still exists, but when I was a student, they would send 2 cadets out there every summer to work as IT techs. So you're basically running cables, setting up PowerPoints, managing emails, that kind of stuff. It's pretty good. It was a pretty good value proposition for both institutions, because the military, they paid our salary, flew us out there, and we got a really great experience that led us to perform better in school. And ISC got two really motivated workers, and all they had to provide was food and board. It was just an incredible opportunity. I got to meet so many cool people, dozen astronauts, including the legendary Canadian Dr. Bob Thirsk. I got to sit in on lectures from leaders from NASA and ESA, because the whole thing is that if you're not busy, if you're not actively doing work, you can go sit on any lecture, participate in any activity in this program that is usually quite selective to attend.
Wow, what an opportunity!
Yeah, it was awesome. It's also kind of a funny first example of me being in the wrong place at the right time, because that year there was 3 OJT spots for students in the space science program. One was working with the USAF doing satellite kind of design and management at the Air Force Academy. And they wanted the person with the best grades, the smartest guy, because it seemed like it was going to be pretty intense. And then the 2 other guys got to go to Ireland. I fortunately wasn't the smartest, cookie in the pile. I don't know if that's a saying, but so I got the worst deal and got to go to Ireland, which I'm still pretty happy about. As far as I'm aware, the Air Force or the military still sends one person engaged in 3 Canadian Space Division out to do the program every year, because the military sees so much value in it.
Yeah, space is such a domain of growing importance, and you can see our military taking it more and more seriously every year. Let's talk a bit about your early flight training. You attended Phase 1 flight training on the Grob after 3rd year in 2018. How did you feel as you arrived for your first flight training course in the RCAF?
Yeah, so much anticipation. After aircrew selection, it's really your first shot at seeing if you can actually do the job, right? And that weighed on me a lot, flying out there for sure.
Yeah. Did you find that you had a lot of like self-induced pressure as a result of that, or?
Yeah, absolutely. It was at that point I'd dedicated 3 years of my life to having this opportunity, and I'd always heard how hard it was, and the risk of failure is real. And so, it's kind of like, do I get to keep doing this job, or do I have to pivot and do something else?
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough. Like, that's one thing that is really challenging about your early flight training in the forces, is that background knowledge and awareness that this is my career. And if I don't, if I fail 2 flights in a row, that could be it. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're always it's sort of this weird dichotomy that you need to stay aware of that and take it seriously, but at the same time, like, you can't fixate on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I do appreciate, though, that your success is almost entirely in your hands.
Mm-hmm.
So while it's a lot of pressure and stress, you have a lot of agency, which is nice.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. What was your first impression of flight training in the RCAF?
Very demanding. It's very fast paced, but it's also delivered by true professionals who really care about your success. I didn't know anything about flying. Like, I had to stop a lecture midway through because they were talking about the traffic pattern, and I didn't know what a downwind leg was. And so you're starting from first principles. But they really structure it to get you from knowing absolutely nothing to soloing in a few weeks, which I thought was really impressive.
It is pretty amazing to think that, because like a lot of the time I hear from guests like, oh yeah, I was in Air Cadets, or my parents set me up with a few lessons or whatever. But the program is designed for and does regularly take people who have absolutely no flying experience and turn them into pilots within a matter of weeks. Like, that's pretty amazing. If you talk to, I think if like the average person walked in off the street and talked to a Phase 1 student who was like a month in, they'd be pretty impressed with the amount of knowledge they've soaked up in that month.
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly leaned on my Air Cadet and private pilot license colleagues during the course, just getting that, corporate knowledge that wasn't directly taught. But I think that's present throughout flight training,
100%. Yeah, that's a community. Flight training is a community-based style of learning, or it should be when you're doing it in its best form. Um, Different people pick up on different things. Different people learn different things and make different mistakes when they're flying, and you just learn from that, right?
Yeah, we don't have all the time to make all the mistakes and learn all the lessons on our own.
That's right. How did phase one go for you overall?
Good enough, I'll say. It was a real challenge. I was working harder than I thought was possible at the time. It's just such a massive change and a real culture shock to go from, the post-secondary school type learning, all theory, to flight training where it's theory, and then you got to go do it, right?
It is a big change. It's for a lot of people, it's the first like very practical professional course they put their hands on. So it is a huge change from all the theory of school. And then finally, there's still the theory to learn, but you're going to put your hands on and actually do it.
Yeah. When I first showed up, they kind of describe it as it's like being in midterms in university, but then also being in like hockey playoffs at the same time because you just have to, it's so much pressure and you have to physically perform at all times.
Yeah.
Because it just like you said on phase one, you're 2 bad flights away from doing something else.
So you graduated from RMC with honors and you were posted to 429 Transport Squadron in Trenton, Ontario. Initially, you were expecting a short wait, but the world had other plans. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so when I graduated, it was supposed to be 6 to 9 months of waiting, which is pretty standard at the time. But as we all know, COVID happened, and so that ballooned and ended up being 2 years in OJT there. It was actually a pretty cool opportunity, super big bummer at the time. But just being able to work at 429, which has such a cool mission, really opened my eyes to just the complexities of flying a multi-engine aircraft around the world. And while I was always very driven to fly jets, it certainly made me a little bit more open to the idea of flying something else. Everyone in the Air Force, every pilot that I've spoken to thinks their job's the best. And a lot of the folks in Trenton really convinced me of that.
Yeah, I think that is a really important truth that, man, we've said this so many times, but there is no bad cockpit in the Air Force to end up in. Like like you said, everybody thinks they have the best job. And how can that be unless they're all great jobs?
Absolutely. Talking to my friends that are out flying operationally now, it's like they all, they razz me, I razz them.
Yeah, of course.
Because, we all have the best job.
Yeah. Yeah. So this delay actually led to another amazing opportunity for you, working at CFS Alert, the northernmost continuously inhabited place in the world. What were your experiences up there like?
CFS Alert is an incredible, incredible place. When I was waiting for phase 2, an email came out asking for someone to volunteer and work up there. I didn't really know a whole lot about it at the time, but one of the things about that seemed cool to me about joining the military was that you could get to go do these neat things that no one else could. So I applied, was fortunately selected, and it was a really great experience. I was a projects officer up there, which basically meant I worked on procurement. You're also one of only roughly 3 commissioned officers up there. So you get some other assorted officer type tasks that my 8-month-old second lieutenant stripe was certainly not prepared for. But it definitely showed me that you can fill the shoes that are issued to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I showed up in February. It was completely dark, and I got to watch the sun rise for the first time in months. And Alert holds a party every time the sun rises and every time the sun sets for an extended period of time, which is pretty cool. I got to see polar bears, got to see Arctic wolves. Yeah, it's just a lot of things that you never get to experience living in the relative south of Canada. But, I went up there in February 2020. So in March, COVID really happened. The world grinded to a halt. Which for us was actually pretty benign at the start because they essentially just halted all flights to Alert, which is how we get new people. So we're able to keep the gym open. We didn't have to social distance. We got to keep the bar open, which was, I'm pretty sure, unique in Canada, and that was pretty nice. But what the side effect of that was that we couldn't get new people up. So while the military was able to order people to stay past their end of tour date, the civilian contractors up there were not required. And the civilian contractors are responsible for essentially all the infrastructure up there. They're absolutely essential to the operation of the station. So most of them stayed, and they're fantastic people, but some had to go home. So it ended up that all the military folks just kind of ended up wearing 4, 5, 6, 7 hats, which was interesting, kind of seeing the team come together in this adverse situation. So COVID was really terrible in a lot of ways, and as everyone knows, and I didn't really want to wait 2 years for training, but I ended up getting to spend 4.5 months in Alert, and it's something I wouldn't trade for the world.
How long were you supposed to be up there?
Only 3 months.
Okay, so you got an extra month and a half.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that must have been starting to get pretty tiring by the end of your time there with all the jobs everyone was doing.
Yeah, you were working really, really long days. And it's hard up there because there's limited external communications. So you have limited phone time. You get like 1 30-minute phone call a day. So maintaining relationships with family back home was challenging for sure.
Yeah, that sounds. I mean, that's actually more isolated than it was for me when I went to the Middle East. Like I had unlimited phone calls and video chat, and that was provided. Like there was a bunch of laptops and phones and stuff you could use to call home, and then eventually we had Wi-Fi, and you could literally just FaceTime.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, we've come a long way. It's crazy to think that it was easier in the Middle East than it was in Alert.
Yeah, well, Alert is extremely isolated. The nearest settlement is like 850 kilometers away.
Wow.
And it's like 200 Inuit folks, I think.
Yeah.
You're closer to Moscow than you are to Ottawa when you're up there.
Wow, that's wild. Back to flight training. Finally, it was time for you to attend Phase 2 flight training. How did you find flying the Harvard II?
The Harvard is it's an awesome plane to fly. It's really challenging if you want to do it well, but early on, it's pretty forgiving and lets you learn the basics of how to be a pilot. But it's neat because as you advance and start doing more difficult phases, it really will challenge you to fly it well.
Yeah, I agree with that. The Harvard is a super fun plane to fly. It's very high performance. In terms of like the learning curve, I feel like initially, like you said, you can improve pretty quickly and get a good grasp on how to fly it. But the finer points of really finessing it are challenging for sure. Like when you get into form or low level navigation or any of those things where you need a lot more finesse and fine control, it's challenging for sure.
Yeah, even the instructor pilots that fly it full time have to go up every month and get what they call mutual time, just so they can go and get some time on the stick and make sure their proficiency is high because it fades so quickly in that plane.
Yeah, exactly. Did you have any particular challenges while making your way through Phase 2?
Yeah, I failed my ICHT, the initial clear hood test, I think is what it stands for. It was my second test, and I was really beginning to realize going into that I had pretty significant test anxiety. It was really affecting my performance. And this only compounded when it came to reflying the test, because as we've discussed already, if you fail 2 tests in a row, you've technically met course failure criteria. And so that can mean going on and doing something else. So it was a very, very challenging period in my life. But passing that retest was up there on all-time feelings of relief.
Yeah, no doubt. Anxiety and performance anxiety, test anxiety is such a difficult thing when it comes to flying, because once it's in there, like you really have to, you can't just ignore it. Eventually you have to find some way of conquering it. And it's such a very challenging thing because once it's there, it's there. Like if it happens to you on a flight, you're probably going to experience that again. So you have to figure it out. So how did you overcome that?
Yeah, the experience really forced me to focus on developing the mental aspect of my flying game, if you will. Luckily, the Air Force has realized that this performance and test anxiety it's a very common experience in flight training and being a pilot in general, right?
Yeah.
So they've hired mental performance coaches in Moose Jaw and in Portage La Prairie. And so I began engaging with them a lot more regularly. I also started reading books on mental performance, listening to podcasts, etc., because it made me realize that mental fortitude and the ability to handle these stressful situations is pretty similar to physical fitness, and it needs to be regularly trained and exercised, right? So I developed my own methods, helped me focus, be in the moment, and believe that I could overcome these challenges. I came up with a simple mantra. I still always say when I step to a jet, it's calm, confident, ready. And the thing is, you can't just say those things. You have to have studied to be ready. And if I felt ready, then I go on to the next step. Am I confident? Have I chair flown this enough to feel confident? And if I am ready and I'm confident, then I can be calm and believe that all my preparation has set me up for success on this. And I think if you can sit down in a plane and strap it on and feel some calm, you're going to perform so much better, because that experience, taking an airplane airborne in the military anyways, it takes all of your focus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. I have experienced both types of flying in the military for sure. I have had days where I was anxious or nervous, and those are the days where you overthink everything, and you see a light come on for a second. You're like, does that always happen? Like, you start to overthink everything. I had a instrument check one time in the King Air, and I was almost at the runway, and I realized I hadn't put on my shoulder straps. Like those are those days. And then you have days where you are calm, confident, ready, and everything is just smooth as butter. You couldn't make a mistake if you tried. You're thinking 10 steps ahead. And those are the days that you want to strive to obviously have more of.
Yeah, those are the days that make being a pilot a real joy.
Absolutely. When everything is just coming together and you are just crushing it, it's such an amazing feeling.
Absolutely.
KF Aerospace, Canada's largest MRO and founding partner in SkyAlign for the Future Aircrew Training Program, is proud to be the exclusive North American dealer for the Grob 120TP. The Grob 120TP is a world-class training aircraft, combining turbine power, advanced avionics, side-by-side seating, and full aerobatic capability. Already trusted by the German Air Force, Canada's Future Aircrew Training Program, and militaries worldwide, it's built to deliver performance and reliability. With its versatility, the Grob 120TP is the ideal platform for both military training and civilian programs, including upset recovery training. Go to kfaero.ca, that's kfaero.ca, to learn more and get in touch with us.
So you also learned a lot about physical preparedness on this course, which may sound counterintuitive to some because the Harvard II is not too physically demanding to fly. Can you tell us about this?
Yeah, so early on in phase 2, we were made to participate in a physical fitness program. It was designed and focused on pilots, included some core strength, compound body movements, and neck strengthening. It was Air Force sponsored and included a kind of a study associated with it. And initially it seemed pretty excessive because the Harvard can pull, I think, 6.5, 7 Gs, but it bleeds energy fairly quickly. So, the flights can be pretty draining, but it wasn't physically exhausting. And I didn't see why we had to do this whole physical, training regimen to go fly it. But then step to the Italian jet, the T-346, which can pull 8 Gs with ease. It can sustain 4 to 5 all day long. And
Wow.
by the way, while you're doing that, you also are going to be expected to be looking behind you because somebody is on your tail trying to get you. So those flights were where I wish I'd taken the program a little bit more seriously, because the jet certainly had more fight in it. It had more bite, but I had to let off the gas because, G-lock, G-induced loss of consciousness is a real risk. And that really drove home the importance of just being physically ready to do this job.
Yeah. It's funny I always admire fast jet guys for the physical side of the job that they're doing. And because I remember I grayed out one time on the Harvard because I just wasn't ready for a bit of G that came on. It doesn't take much if you're not straining. It doesn't take much for the blood to drain out of your brain. And that kind of G straining all the time and pulling, like you said, 8 G easy, 4 or 5 G sustain, that must be exhausting.
Yeah, fortunately, it's kind of like everything in the Air Force. It's a step-by-step process. So, you fly the Grob, it pulls 3 Gs. Then you fly the Harvard, it pulls 6. And then they send you away for the G course, where you learn how to properly G strain. You're exposed to higher G loads. And then we had to do another one to go to Italy. We had to get exposed to 8 Gs. And so it's a step-by-step process, and you just kind of adapt to it, right?
Yeah, that's crazy. When you get exposed to 8 Gs, is that those videos that you see online of the people you're in like that spinning machine basically, and they just whip you around until you're at 8 G and you're straining kind of thing? Or how does that work?
Yeah, it's pretty uncomfortable. They spin you at 8 Gs for 15 seconds.
Wow.
And you have to last, or else you don't pass.
Do you have like G pants on or anything, or is that all with your own?
Yeah, you wear G pants. You wear G pants.
I'm obviously kind of ignorant about what's possible with and without that stuff, but
I mean, I'm sure there's fellas a little bit more G tolerant than I who could maybe hack it, but I need the G pants.
Yeah, that's fair. So you obviously made it through phase 2, and in the end, you were selected jets. How did it feel to make it that one step closer to your goals?
Yeah, Brian, as I'm sure you can relate, selection is such a big event, right? It's got so much aura around it, and I'm pretty sure every pilot can tell you something about their selection day. So to finally get there was a huge relief, because while I always wanted to fly jets, I had matured enough in my training to realize that I'd be super happy to fly pretty much anything in the Air Force. And I was excited just to have a path forward.
Yeah.
What am I going to do with my career, But that being said, being told I was going to get to continue to fly the Harvard was awesome. The funny thing is that me and my friends always talk about this, is that when you get selected to do phase 3 Harvard, which both FAPEs, first assignment instructor pilots, and jet pilots will do, it's just an immediate joy. But pretty quickly afterwards, you realize like, whoa, dang, I actually have to go do phase 3, because it only ever gets harder with every course you complete. And that was true with getting selected to go to Italy. I was like so stoked. And then it's like, okay, now I need to go learn how to fly a jet. I need to learn how to go employ it tactically. And again, same with going on to fly the Hornet. It's awesome, but I know it's going to be harder than anything I've ever done.
For sure. Yeah, that's kind of the whole story of military flight training, right? Like, and I imagine that's true to quite an extent in the civilian world as well. Like, you're always moving on to bigger and better things, and that's super exciting. But at the same time, the reality, comes home, and it's time to hit the books and really get to work.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no resting on your laurels in our business.
No. So I don't know a lot about phase 3 Harvard training. Can you briefly outline the course for us?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very similar to phase 2, but they just step up all the phases a little bit and put a lot of focus on airmanship and decision making. The intent is to create an instrument-rated aircraft captain in a single pilot environment. If you imagine, phase 2 is like learning to drive your mom's car, the basics, how to parallel park, drive on the highway. Phase 3 is kind of like ripping the doors off, taking it to the track, and seeing if you can squeeze every ounce of juice out of it. So what that looks like is For example, in Clearhood, you do basic aerobatics, some straightforward pattern work. On phase 3, you'll max perform the aircraft and do more complex pattern work that's much more focused on energy management. For instrument flying, on phase 2, you stay local. You go to Swift Current, Regina. On phase 3, you'll take it to the Harvard to San Francisco, Vancouver. Formation flying, you go from learning basics of flying on the wing of another guy to flying tactically and how to maneuver the aircraft dynamically in relation to another aircraft. And then that ties into navigation, which instead of you doing at 500 feet alone, you'll do with a partner. So you'll be a mile apart at 500 feet, navigate low level together. And then that all comes together in what they call the composite phase, where you'll combine multiple different types of missions into one, and you're responsible for executing any top maneuver procedure safely and legally. So you can take off, go do a bit of a low-level navigation route, then you have to negotiate your way into the airspace, do some clear hood handling exercises, then you go meet up with your friend, go fly some formation, and then you might come back for an instrument approach. And the whole thing is you have to do that without breaking any rules and also get back on time.
That sounds really challenging.
It is certainly a big challenge, but the instruction we get is excellent, and they certainly get you there. And the missions are structured to ensure your success as well.
Yeah. Did you find that phase 3 was fairly challenging, or did it feel more like a continuation of phase 2?
It was definitely harder. The expectations are much higher, and I was working longer and more focused hours than I ever did on phase 2.
Yeah.
But that being said, as we discussed, I was really prioritizing my mental performance, and I had some really awesome flying continuity. So I enjoyed phase 3 a lot more than phase 2.
Yeah.
I was doing really hard things, but I felt ready to do them, and so it was really fun.
Yeah, you kind of turn that corner mentally.
Mm-hmm.
I know when you get to phase 3 in the multi-world, it feels like they treat you more like an adult. Did you find that was true in phase 3 Harvard as well?
Certainly. Yeah, it's you're almost completely responsible for mission preparation, planning, and you make almost all the decisions airborne. When I first got started on phase 3, my instructor sat me down. He wrote on the whiteboard, he said, phase 2 is A plus B equals C. And underneath, he wrote, phase 3 is A plus question mark equals make it happen. And so the expectation is just that you're going to behave like an aircraft captain and execute a mission.
Mm-hmm.
So during the trips, they will, they'll teach you specific maneuvers. They'll instruct you on that kind of stuff. But they'll let you make a ton of terrible decisions and paint yourself into a corner.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not going to say anything unless you're going to do something unsafe or you're going to break a rule. And then you go learn in the debrief, right?
Yeah. Those are the best mentors, the ones who know exactly how much rope to give you, where you can make your mistakes and, like you said, paint yourself into a corner, but it doesn't get to a point where it's unsafe.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to earn your wings down in San Angelo, Texas for the first Jaw South detachment. Moose Jaw students are so used to flying in the exact same place all the time. What was it like to fly somewhere else?
Very overwhelming at first. The airport is a commercial airport. Also has a civilian flying school, so there's a ton of traffic, and they're not using the standard radio calls you're used to in Moose Jaw. You don't have all the same references, so developing situational awareness of what's going on was really challenging. But the reality of the job is that you're going to have to fly places new.
Mm-hmm.
You have to adapt to complex environments. So it was really cool to have the chance to grow my bucket a little bit in a relatively controlled environment.
Yeah, it's nice that you got to do that pre-wings as well, kind of before you're expected to be the adult in the room. Like you had one last chance to go and get this have this growth experience. I remember when I was in Moose Jaw. Now this was phase 2, obviously. So you guys obviously on the phase 3 course, like you've said, you're treated more like adults and you make a lot more decisions and stuff, and you've got more experience. But I remember on phase 2, people would freak out if the runway changed, and it was like, oh, I've only flown on that runway twice, and then now you find yourself off in Texas, in a totally different environment. So it must have been quite something.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember being like that on phase 2, where you studied so hard for these exact parameters, and then they change on you. But being able to adapt, so important, right?
Oh yeah, that's the bread and butter of being a pilot. So you were initially streamed to go FAPES or first assignment instructor pilot on the Harvard, but it sounds like there is a pretty good story behind you ending up attending lead-in fighter training or lift in Italy. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I wish it was a better story, but it's just kind of a combination of a bit of hard work, good luck, and being in the right place at the right time. My grades coming out of phase two were not the best. So while I made the cut to continue on the Harvard, leadership figured I could use some time as a FAPE to develop a bit more before making a decision to go on to fly the CF-18. I've only heard good things about being a FAPE. All my friends that have done it have really enjoyed their time. So it actually let me relax a lot on phase three because I didn't feel like I had to fight my way through another selection. But fortunately, like we discussed with the mental performance and kind of that relaxed state, it allowed me to perform quite a bit better on phase three than I did on phase two, which opened the door for that would allow me to continue directly to flying fighters. That wouldn't have mattered though if the Air Force hadn't secured 2 spots in Italy that weren't forecast in the summer of 2024, and I was lucky enough to just be in the right place at the right time. So it just kind of goes to show you that this job is it's a lot of hard work, but it's a lot of good timing and a bucket of good luck.
Yeah, so many of my guests have talked about times where just chance led them to a new opportunity. And sometimes it's something that, in this case, which is like obviously exciting, like going to a different country to do lead-in fighter training. Sometimes it's something like, oh crap, I never wanted to go to this place. And then it ends up being an amazing experience. So you really never know. Also, I know that we are right now, as we don't have our own lead-in fighter training in Canada, they're working very hard to find as many slots and solutions as possible. So it's great that they scrounged up a couple extra slots that year.
Yeah, I'm certainly very happy about it.
Yeah. So let's talk about Italy. Can you briefly describe the training setup in Italy for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So the course occurs at what's called the International Flight Training School, IFTS, in Decimomannu, Sardinia. That's an island off the west coast of Italy. It's run by the Italian Air Force, called 212 Squadron, but supported by civilian contracted maintenance and instructors, similar to how Moose Jaw operates. They have a mix of military and civilian instructors that'll take you through sims and all the flights as well. Basically, the course starts with 11 flights to convert to the aircraft type, and then you'll directly transition to the tactical phase of the course. So you'll do BFM, which is basic fighter maneuvers, 1 versus 1. And then you move on to air combat maneuvering, which is 2 good guys against 1 bad guy, which leads into radar intercepts, where you use your radar to go find another aircraft in a small piece of sky. Then you continue using your radar and learn how to do beyond visual range engagements, which means just shooting missiles without seeing them. There's also an air-to-ground portion, so you'll do low-level navigation similar to how you would in Moose Jaw with some simulated attacks on targets. You do close air support with real JTACs, Joint Terminal Attack Controllers. So they'll talk you onto a target, and you have to work with them to deliver a simulated munition onto the target.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a pretty neat experience. You also get to fly a live range, so you'll go drop real inert training bombs, and they get scored, which was a pretty neat experience.
That's probably a fun day.
Yeah, it's like probably one of the best weeks of the course for sure.
Yeah.
And it all kind of culminates in you having to execute these basic strike missions where you have to go in with some simulated bombs on your jet, and then you'll go fight some bad guys and try to make a delivery on time on the correct target. You also will do some flying at night. So you get to fly in night vision goggles, do a couple of those missions with those on. So overall, pretty thorough course, I would say.
Yeah, that sounds like. How long is the course in time?
It's 10 months long, roughly 150 missions.
Oh wow! So that's quite a bit of experience. That's awesome. Who gets to attend this course, and how is it decided which Canadians go there?
So everyone who attends LIFT will be graduates of Phase 3 on the Harvard or FAPEs who have completed their first instructional tour. That's also true for those attending NJEP on the T-38 down in Texas or other LIFT option, basically, to get guys onto the Hornet. The fighter force decides who attends LIFT and NJEP. I don't really know exactly what goes into the selection process, so I won't really speculate beyond saying that good grades and a good attitude are helpful for getting stream fighters.
That's fair.
Who goes to Italy versus Texas, beyond my pay grade. But in my case, it was timing, spots in Italy before Texas.
Okay, right on. So what is the experience like to go from a fairly simple aircraft like the Harvard II to the T-346?
It's a lot, yeah. Even something as simple as gaining an understanding of all the new systems on a twin-engine jet, and then also how to incorporate all the new information it's spitting out at you in your cross-check is pretty challenging. I completely forgot about the HUD for the first couple of flights. I was just flying off the displays down below. So adapting to all that's pretty challenging. You also have to be really aware of the jet's capabilities. It accelerates really easily. It's really hard to slow down. It'll give you 8Gs, no problem. It also rolls on it's sitting on top of a pen.
Yeah.
And so a really common experience is you'll take off for your first flight. You go to turn out to the area and you just apply the standard amount of left roll that you think you would need. And you just roll about 120 degrees upside down because it rolls so quickly. But yeah, I'd say the Harvard prepares you well, but it's certainly a big step up.
How difficult is the T-346 to fly overall?
I'll be honest, it flies like a dream.
Yeah.
It's designed to be really easy to fly because when you're in the later tactical phases, you just don't have the brain bites to devote to flying it as much as you would if you weren't doing a tactical mission.
For sure.
So it has things that help you with that. It's fly-by-wire, and they have this thing called carefree handling, which basically means you can put any control input at any airspeed, any attitude, and it will not depart, and it will not overstress the aircraft.
Okay.
It also has auto trim in the pitch axis, which means that if I put the nose on the horizon, it won't climb and it won't descend. So you can just kind of put it there and leave it, and it'll do its own thing. And it also has an autopilot, which is awesome. You do need to learn how to fly the autopilot almost as much as you need to learn how to fly the jet.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, it's a very straightforward aircraft to fly.
Yeah. And that's pretty standard in terms of the autopilot stuff. Like automation is obviously a huge workload reducer. But it is because they are so sophisticated, they also can be fairly complex, and having like a very, very good understanding of them is critical.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. From a student perspective, how demanding is the course in Italy?
Yeah, it's pretty demanding. It's a very high pace of learning throughout. Like I said, you only get 11 flights to transition to the aircraft, so it's a couple single ship flights. You do like 6 formation flights, and then after that, they stamp you, seal of approval. You can go fly this thing safely domestically. So after that, they just start piling it on because you've proven that you can do this at a basic level. So, for example, night flying, you will do 1 single ship night flight, and then the next flight you're going to be flying in formation off another jet. And it's possible that's your second night flight ever. You can also have it where you'll finish your transition phase on the jet, and then you'll do 2 BFM flights, and then after that, you're taking it solo. And so to go so quickly from a prop to a twin engine jet, so now I'm taking this jet solo, I'm going to go fight another aircraft, it's a really steep learning curve and really challenging. But over there, they really leverage simulation a lot, which is really helpful because it's so easy to fly. You don't need so much of the hands and feet, seat of the pants kind of sensations,
right?
And it's a lot of systems management, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. A little while ago, I did a series with Dan McWilliams. He was a Cold War F-18 pilot, one of the first cadres on the F-18, and that was something he said about learning to fly the F-18 was it's a beautiful aircraft. It's easy to fly. The real challenge is all the system management, and I think that's probably going to be true on any modern fighter. Like more and more aircraft, especially military aircraft, are a weapons platform or a systems platform to accomplish some mission. So the systems management is really where most of the work goes in.
Yeah, it's definitely where you make your money. On the later flights, it's like 90% of dealing with what's happening on the screens, and then you have to like bring your head up. Okay, I'm still flying around, still flying an airplane, and then you go back to like the systems management.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. So, how did the course go for you?
It went well. There's a lot of hard moments, and days where I was pushed to the limits of my limited experience. But that's kind of the point, right? Me and my wingman were luckily able to make it through without any major hiccups. But that's largely thanks to the awesome instruction and the support we got from over there.
That's great. And how did you enjoy Italy itself?
It was awesome, as you can imagine. The food was great. Great pasta, good pizza. Because it's an island, you're only ever about 30 minutes away from really world-class beaches, which was a nice way to decompress and unwind. Pretty close to Europe, so you can take some trips on long weekends.
Yeah.
And most of all, just the people. It's an international school, so you're getting instruction from, Greek pilots, Belgian pilots, British pilots, and really making lifelong friends. Like I have connections all over the world now, thanks to that time I got to spend over there.
That's pretty amazing. I used to enjoy that about Moose Jaw. I don't know how many. Is there still a fairly international presence or a fairly large international presence in Moose Jaw?
No, Hungary was the last country to still be flying as part of NFTC, and they pulled out a year or two ago.
Okay, yeah. I used to really enjoy that about Moose Jaw, though. The meeting the people from Italy, from Hungary. There was a few other countries there at the time as well. It's a cool experience getting that multicultural flavor in your flight training and getting to meet people from all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're now waiting to start training on the CF-18 Hornet. Are you excited to get out there and get on an operational jet?
Yeah, I can't wait. As I've mentioned before, it's a bit of a double-edged sword because I've got a lot of excitement, but there's also a lot of anticipation because I know it's just going to challenge me more than any flying course I've done yet.
Yeah, but at least at this point, you've developed a lot more of the tools to deal with that, right?
Yeah, I do feel like going through flight training has given me a good set of tools that I'll need to get me through the course.
Yeah, and speaking of that, do you think you've been well prepared by Lyft?
I hope so. Talking to Hamza, who I think you're speaking to, he's the senior Canadian instructor over there. He was also an instructor on the CF-18's OTU, the training course for the Hornet, as well as the two fellows who did the course before me and are now flying the Hornet. It sounds like the syllabus they present in Lyft is a pretty solid job of providing a baseline for continuing on to the Hornet. Lots of work to do, but I'm going to choose to believe them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the course you did sounds very challenging and it sounds very thorough. So I would imagine it's going to be a pretty good prep for the CF-18 course.
Yeah, from what my understanding is that the syllabus you do in Italy is pretty similar to the syllabus you'll do on the fighter pilot course. So hopefully it'll, I won't have done everything to the level that they're obviously going to teach me to do it, but I'll have have done an introduction,
Yeah, for sure. What are you most excited for in the operational jet world?
I've been training in some form or another for the last 10 years. It's been a really long road, so I'm really excited to do the real thing. I will say 10 years is not the standard anymore. It's gotten a lot better with COVID and stuff, right? The reality of flying fighters, though, is the training never stops. I'm looking forward to that, but I think it'll be really cool to hold the queue, serve Canadians, and give back a little bit for all the Air Force has given me in the last 10 years.
Yeah, 100%. And when you say hold the queue, you're talking about the quick reaction force, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The folks that are sitting around 24/7 monitoring and defending our airspace.
Yeah. And you're totally right. Like the work never ends, right? No matter
No.
what you end up flying in, you're always training, you're always working at it. But I totally get what you're saying, that after all this time, there's going to be a certain satisfaction of finally getting on your operational aircraft.
Yeah, absolutely. There will be a day at some point in the future where I am not getting actively evaluated during a flight, and that is exciting.
Yes, and that is a nice feeling too, to just be able to fly, let me tell you. So let's close out with our final 3 questions. What would you say is one thing that you consider essential to do to stay ready to do your job?
I'm really big on sleep. Getting a good night's rest has always been really important to me to excel while flying. When I was doing post-secondary education. So I kind of try to maintain that in my cross check, so to speak. When I was on phase 2, my flight commander sat us all down for a briefing on crew rest. He spelled it out pretty clearly, and he said, "Well, we have a 12-hour crew duty day limit before we go home. Our duty didn't really cease then, because in general, aircrew are broadly entitled to 12 hours of rest between duty periods." And his point was that after our crew duty day ends, it is now our new duty to go and make sure we use that time to get appropriately rested for our missions the next day. And so that really, brought it home for me. I've never really been the guy to pull an all-nighter or cram, and I realize that operationally the opportunities for rest may be a bit more irregular, but I really intend on focusing on it moving forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Sleep is essential. You've just earned your wings and have seen people succeed and fail out of flight training. What do you think makes a great jet pilot?
I don't, I'd say I'm probably underqualified to define what makes a great jet pilot. But I'll highlight some attributes of the folks that I looked up to during training.
Sure.
One, they were all extremely hard workers. They studied harder, they prepped more, they chair flew more thoroughly than anyone else, But to go with that, they were also extremely humble. Despite doing better than anyone else, they realized the job is really all about learning. And so when they come back from a trip, you'd ask them how it went. They're not going to stand there and, tell tales of how awesome they were. They're just going to get straight into the stuff that they did poorly and brainstorm a little bit about how to do better and just try and pass that learning on to everyone else.
Right on.
Yeah. And then just the final thing is they're all just really, really good people and team players, because the fast jet community has this kind of stereotype. It's just a bunch of individuals flying around doing their thing. But the reality is that despite being alone in your own cockpit, every mission essentially is flown as a pair at a minimum, and you work as a team much the same way as a aircraft commander and a first officer would, right?
Yep.
So having a good attitude and having someone that you trust is super important, and they just all demonstrated that day to day through their actions and words.
Yeah, that's awesome. If you ran into a student pilot that really wanted to attend lift, what advice would you give them?
It's a very long road, and it's challenging, and it doesn't get any easier the further along you get. That being said, the long days of studying and the years of training it takes are super rewarding. I'm really thankful for the opportunities I've had. I don't regret any of them for a minute, and nothing beats going up solo in a jet on a Friday afternoon for a dogfight.
Yeah, I believe it. Okay, Eli, that's going to wrap up our chat for today. Man, this has been so cool to have you go from reaching out to the show to ending up as a guest on the show. I'm really thankful that you've given us some of your time today and put yourself out there. So thank you very much. And we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Brian.
Yep. Fly safe.
Thanks.
Okay, that wraps up our 3-part series on the Lead-In Fighter Training or LIFT program in Italy. For our next series, we will be sitting down with Major Ian Wookie to talk about his experiences flying the CH-147F Chinook. Do you have any questions or comments about anything you've heard in this show? Would you or someone you know make a great guest, or do you have a great idea for a show? You can reach out to us at thepilotprojectpodcast@gmail.com or on all social media at @podpilotproject. And be sure to check out that social media for lots of great videos of our RCAF and mission aviation aircraft. As always, we'd like to thank you for tuning in and ask for your help with the big three. That's like and follow us on social media, share with your friends, and follow and rate us 5 stars wherever you get your podcasts. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. Keep the blue side up. See ya!
Engineer, shut down all 4.
Shutting down all 4 engines.